Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Consumer Attorneys Association of Los Angeles 1993 President Tom Dempsey.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody for coming also. This is always a great event. It's just always terrific. Tonight's honoree, Conal Doyle, I met approximately 4.5 years ago. At that time, I was the president of Trialists for Public Justice, as it was called at that time, something Bruce Boylett got me involved in. And we had a client by the name of Francisco Castaneda, who was in federal custody with the Immigration and Consumer Enforcement. The acronym is ICE, and what an appropriate acronym. They are some of the most cold-hearted people I have ever come across. In any event, Conal had a national practice, very lucrative national practice, but he was based principally in California, and he had some unique experience in that he tried both civil rights and medical malpractice cases, and that's what this was about. These are exactly the skills that we were looking for, so Conal was recruited as lead counsel to work with various attorneys with public justice. Let me give you just a little background and summary of the case. Francisco had come to this country with his parents at 10 years old. Over the years had gotten in some trouble and was actually in state custody, was arrested, and developed a lesion on his penis. It continued to get worse, and a biopsy to determine whether this was any cancerous condition was recommended. Well, the state never got around to it. He was then transferred to federal authorities to determine whether or not he would be deported. The condition kept getting worse. The lesion got more aggravated, got more ugly, got more painful. Obviously, was something serious. Under the federal government, however, when you're an immigration detainee, that system only provides what's called extraordinary medical care, such as a biopsy, if you have an injury or an illness that requires extraordinary care and is threatening to life and limb. Well, of course, until they had the biopsy, you couldn't tell whether cancer, which would be deadly, was his condition, and he couldn't get the extraordinary care. So in this Kafkaskian nightmare that he went through for months and months, I think it ended up being something like 14 months, the emotional and psychological damage that was being done to him, as well as the physical, of having this festering condition, pleading for a biopsy, and nobody being able to give it to you because of this catch-22 situation. Well, Conal took over this case, and it became a quest to change this unbelievably unjust situation. Filed in state court, filed in federal court, two parallel claims. In the federal court, the government made a motion to dismiss the case on immunities. It was denied. Judge Pragerson, a very, very good judge, described this situation as being, quote unquote, the definition of cruel, unusual punishment. Winning at the district court, they appealed to the 9th district. We won there again. Well, it just so happens that the nation, the United States, was becoming more interested in the abuses in federal immigration detention situations. In this very hotel, Conal and I sat down with Scott Pelley of 60 Minutes and gave an interview that was actually played on 60 Minutes about not only this case but other cases where immigration detainees were being abused in one form or another. As the national interest grew in this, LA Times had articles, New York Times had articles, the Washington Post actually started a whole investigative study on this. And in addition to being barraged by paper, by numerous depositions, Conal must have taken 20, 30, 40 depositions, some of which he'd be the only plaintiff's attorney, and there'd be 12 other attorneys representing various aspects of the government. He would get threatening phone calls. Anything like this brings out sometimes the worst in people, and the anti-immigration forces were sending threatening death threats to him. How can you represent somebody that doesn't belong in this country to begin with? They deserve whatever they get, etc., etc., etc. Having won at the Ninth Circuit, we moved on to the Supreme Court. And unlike the Supreme Court, when I went to law school as being the court of last resort, where whatever happened to you in the lower courts, there you were going to find justice. Here, Conal actually succeeded in uniting that court. It was a 9-0 verdict against us. Unbelievable, but that's the way it was. Now, many attorneys at that point would have packed up their tent and said, you know what, I'm dropping this case. I'm going to take a settlement for whatever I can get. I'm out of here. Not Conal Doyle. He doggedly kept at this, deposition after deposition, building evidence, until finally November 2010, went to trial in the case, on the state case. And going into the case, before the Supreme Court decision, the offer had been from the state about $100,000. After the Supreme Court decision, apparently it was emboldened the state attorneys, and they dropped it to $10,000. So going into trial, he had a $10,000 offer. Well, fortunately, the jury didn't see it that way and came back with a 7-figure verdict. Shortly after that, the government got cold feet, the United States, and they settled for a 7-figure verdict. But that wasn't the point. The point was the government changed that policy. Immigration detainees now have the right to medical care. The quest was fulfilled. Conal succeeded in innumerate immigration detainees not suffering the same kind of emotional, psychological, and physical injury that Francisco did. We've been bombarded over the last years and years and years about trial attorney bar organizations being nothing but a bunch of self-serving, self-interested, greedy, money-grubbing trial lawyers. Tonight, at least for tonight, that myth has been destroyed. All the propagandizing of the public has been destroyed. It is so significant that CAALA chose a trial attorney who gave extraordinary time, effort, financial support to someone who in our society is probably among the weakest and the most vulnerable. Somebody whose voice would not be heard in our judicial system or anywhere else but for Conal Doyle. I take great pride in awarding tonight, or presenting tonight, to Conal Doyle the 2011 Charlie O'Reilly Trial Lawyer of the Year Award. Conal. And Charlie, wherever you are, you've got to be smiling because it's one of your landsmen that is getting this award, another Irishman.
Tom, thank you very much for those kind words. I'm always a little bit uncomfortable being recognized like this, because in our business, when you get an award like this, it means that a family has suffered a tragedy. And that's certainly true in this case. And the Castaneda family, Francisco's daughter Vanessa and his sister Yanni, are here with us tonight. Thank you. Yanni and Vanessa, thank you for allowing me to enjoy this award tonight. And tonight is a special night because there's no higher praise than being recognized by your peers. And this award in particular is undoubtedly one of the highest honors any trial lawyer can receive. But we're here tonight to recognize and celebrate the great power and responsibility that we all have to effect change through the courts. And the courts really are the great equalizer. I think they are the last frontier, the one place where money and politics can't buy justice. And for me, the Castaneda cases epitomize the power of the courts and the daily struggles that we all go through to bring justice to our clients. But before I talk about the cases, some well-deserved acknowledgments are in order. First, I'd like to thank the CAALA Board of Directors. I know that many of you didn't know me very well, and some not at all, when you voted on this award this past October. And because of that, this award means even more to me. And I also think that it speaks volumes about the integrity of the board and the process that brought me to this podium tonight. The other thing that I'd like to do briefly is to recognize the other finalists for this award who are sometimes forgotten on this night, because every one of them deserved to be standing up here tonight, and they made tremendous contributions to the civil justice system this past year. Adam Shea, Carney Shigarian, Matt McNicholas, and Greg Smith. The quest that we undertook, as Tom described it, was not accomplished alone. And although this is a night to celebrate CAALA, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize another organization that is at the forefront for the fight for justice. And that organization is Public Justice. Public Justice is led by Arthur Bryant, and we heard earlier this evening that his wife Nancy passed away this morning. And when the going got tough in this case, it was all hands on deck, with many contributions from the organization. Amy Radon did fantastic work on this case. Arthur Bryant himself and Leslie Bruckner pitched in when we were drafting our Supreme Court briefs. And Adele Kimmel was really the driving force in this case. But I'd really like to single out two people. Number one is Tom Dempsey. Tom, thank you for selflessly donating your time to this case and for coming up with just the right theme or analogy just when we needed it. And Adele Kimmel. Adele, you really deserve to be standing up here beside me and receiving this award. You were my right hand from the beginning of this case, and your boundless energy and enthusiasm for this cause is astonishing. And you never have a great result in a great case without fantastic clients. Yanni, I admire you so much for your loyalty and dedication to Francisco, taking care of him during his last year of life. And Vanessa Castaneda, Vanessa, I'm so proud of you. You're a wonderful woman. You have a limitless future. And Vanessa is getting her associate's degree tomorrow morning at 9:30, and she just bumped her flight back tonight to stay and hear me speak. And finally, I'd like to recognize my parents, who are immigrants, as am I, although I think I'm listed in the brochure as being born in Connecticut. They're from Ireland and Canada. You know, the first time they ever saw me in court was being absolutely skewered by Justice Scalia and his friends in Washington, D.C. It really wasn't a great day for me, but I'm glad that you could see me here in front of a friendlier audience, or at least one that doesn't talk back. And Justice Turner, so, Mom and Dad, thank you for always believing in me. In some ways, the Castaneda cases illustrate both the best and the worst in our system. I was shocked to find out how the United States had turned its back on the immigrant detainee population, a truly powerless and voiceless group. The executive branch of government failed Mr. Castaneda. We appeared before Congress and testified to try to get a change in policy. Congress did nothing. The Supreme Court turned us away. But the trial courts provided the family justice when no one else would. And we sought to convince a Los Angeles jury that you judge the degree of civilization in a society by entering its prisons. But they didn't really, surprisingly enough, require much convincing. They knew what our government apparently didn't. And the reason why a Los Angeles jury issued a shot really heard around the world was because the jury system works for everyone when we as trial lawyers take on the fight that others won't. And before I conclude my remarks, I want to tell you a quick story that I think encapsulates how I feel about these cases. Let me take you back to January 2008. It was the deposition of Francisco Castaneda, and it was literally on his deathbed. He died 2 to 3 weeks after this deposition. And I drive across town deep into East LA to his sister Yanni's house. And it's a humble but very well-kept apartment. And Yanni had cleared out the living room and had erected a sort of a bed and a cot in the corner of the house. I enter the house and I see that Francisco is covered up and he's shivering, and he can no longer walk. His body had been ravaged by the cancer. But although he could barely speak, he has a message for me. And I lean over because he can just speak in a whisper. And he says to me, "Make sure that my suffering is not forgotten. I don't want anybody else to ever go through what I went through." And I promised him that day that I would do everything in my power to bring his family justice and change the policy for provision of medical care to immigration detainees. A filmmaker friend of mine has just completed a documentary called Speak. It's a great film, and it's about the 2008 World Championship in Public Speaking. And I was recently at the film screening, and the woman who won it, LaShonda Rundles, suffered from a terminal illness. And she said, "We aren't half afraid of dying as we are that no one will remember that we were ever here." And that was Francisco's fear on his deathbed. And LaShonda talked about passing from life into death. And she said, "Our words are like seeds that we can sow on this side to make our lives immortal." And that is the gift that we give our clients. We ensure that their tragedies are not forgotten and honor their suffering with safer products, better medicine, and equal rights for all of us. The jury verdict in this case fulfilled my promise to Francisco, and so do nights like this. Thank you so much for honoring his memory. And tonight certainly is a highlight of my career because of the incredible lawyers that have preceded me at this podium. And to give you an idea of the incredible power of persuasion of last year's winner, Ricardo convinced me, against my Irish better judgment, not to drink anything before the speech tonight. And I do plan to catch up to you all in the next couple of hours. So please, and I promise to be a little bit less somber and serious. So come and join us for a drink and celebrate Francisco's memory. Thank you.